Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Uh, we're going to begin and welcome to all the attendees today to our second Geoffrey Youth webinar titled A Career in Accounting and Finance. We successfully had our first webinar a couple of weeks or months back on project management, which Alhamdulillah many people benefit from. I hope we have the opportunity today to explore a different field. Just a kind request if everyone can mute their mics whilst the presentation is going on, so there's no conflict in sounds. And if you have any questions, we will be having questions at the end of the webinar when all the material is covered. Excuse me. And we will open the floor and the users and the attendees to any questions that they would like to ask our professional. So without any further delay, I would like to introduce the professional we have today. His name is Sayyid Kazim Ali Naqvi, and he is kindly taking out his time on this beautiful Saturday to give out his expertise and his professional skills into advising the community on how people can begin a career in accounting and finance. Ali is FCCA qualified and he's a manager in KPMG in financial services. He has around 10 years experience in a top professional services firm. So we are very grateful to Ali for giving his time out today. And now, without further delay, I would like to hand the mic over to Sayyid Ali. And before Ali, you continue, please can I request everyone again to mute their mics? It is causing a lot of sound problems at the moment. So all the new joinees, please can you mute your mics? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, On, and welcome everyone for this session. On approached me about a month back talking about this idea where in the community there are a lot of people trying to understand what are the different sources that they can get into a career in accounting and finance. Coming from the background that I have, I guess it's beneficial for all of us to basically go through different routes from what I understand from my experiences, and then possibly take away some key messages from the session today to understand how we can look into getting into accounting and financial jobs within the industry or the firm. So to start off, basically, just a brief introduction. As On already mentioned, I've been with KPMG for the past 10 years, qualified by ACCA in 2009, started working with KPMG since then. You started working in KPMG Saudi Arabia within basically the audit sector, where I was mainly looking at oil and gas sort of clients, along with some consumer goods and investment management clients, with some hospitality sector clients as well. My main experience has been in an external audit environment. Moved to the UK in 2014 and have been with KPMG UK, where I have been working on external audits again, mainly in the media sector initially, and then now I've moved into investment banking and banking clients. In terms of my qualifications, as already mentioned, I am a chartered certified accountant, and as part of this presentation, I'm also sort of covering how individuals can get into a professional qualification or move forward from a degree. So we'll take that on moving forward.
Sorry to interrupt you, Ali. Are you showing your presentation shortly, or we can't see anything on the screen?
Is it not sharing? Apologies. Thank you for flagging that. Sorry, I'm kind of new to this, so apologies for that. Is everyone able to see my screen now?
Yep, we can see it now.
Okay. Okay, great. Sorry. So just moving on. So starting with what I think about, before we get into the career aspects, I think it's important to understand what actually is accounting and finance. And to put it very simply from the perspective of the simplistic definition of what accounting is, from what I understand, and I've put some examples here on the screen, but simply put, accounting for me is basically how money is recorded in terms of the business showing how the money is flowing within the organization. So in a very simplistic manner, you have money flowing within the business. What accounting does is it just shows how that money is recorded based on specific rules. Moving on to what is finance then. Finance is basically the management and handling of that money within an organization. So if you think from the perspective of how the money is flowing within the business, finance is basically someone sitting down and saying, right, what is happening with the money? Someone analyzing money and saying, right, where am I using my money? How it's being managed? Where can I source my money? Is it coming from internal sources, or do I need to go to external sources to get loans or funding from shareholders, for example? So that's what finance is. Now, what is the importance of accounting and finance? If an accounting and finance function did not exist in a business, basically you could have money being used in whatever manner that people within an organization would find it easy to use. Accounting and finance basically provides a support function within a business where they say, right, here's the money, I am looking at how that money is being used, and then I am showing how that money is being used within a business through the accounting function. And if that did not exist, then people within an organization could use that money for whatever purposes they wanted to. Now, along with understanding what accounting and finance is, we also then need to understand what are the various functions that operate within the industry. And at a very high level, what I think is important to understand is the three different areas where roles exist in accounting and finance. So looking at the first aspect, I was talking about the financial roles. So financial roles are basically looking at how the systematic recording of money is done, along with how it is reported. So systematic recording is basically, I have money in the business. What am I using that money and how it's being recorded within the business? That could be done through uses of various systems, or that could be done manually on an Excel file. Reporting is basically me using that recording and then reporting it to various stakeholders in the business. So by stakeholders, I mean people who are interested in the business. So those could be people like investors, so someone who has invested money in the business. These could be suppliers, so someone who I'm providing a service to, and the most important users could be people like the government and the banks. So the government wants to know from a tax perspective what is happening within a business, and they would like to see how that money is being used within a business for tax purposes. Moving on to another role that also exists in the business is just management of money. So management of money is where there is money already in the business, you need to have a function which basically deals with what is happening with that money. So what people in the management line of business do is they prepare budgets, they prepare forecasts. So they say, we have this amount of money invested in the business. What do we want to do with this money? So management function is basically sitting down and analyzing what are we going to use this money for. That is mainly part of your sort of finance function overall. Now, then moving on to the treasury aspect of the business, people who work in treasury basically deal with financial aspects, which include with managing and sourcing money. So what I mean by managing and sourcing money is basically there is a business that has got a really big contract where they don't have enough money to support that contract. So people in the treasury department would think about, right, where can we get this money from? So they could go to banks, they could go to external shareholders, investors, and think about other various aspects of how they can generate money for the business. So that's an overall picture of what I think exists in the industry at a very high level summary. In terms of common myths about accounting and finance, and I think this one's quite important when you're deciding about a career, and I want to put this at the outset because there is a lot of misconception about people who want to get into accounting and finance. Now, the biggest misconception that I think exists is that accountants have to be maths geniuses. Now, you don't have to know maths really well to get into an accounting and finance role. I'm not saying that if you do know maths, then it's not going to come in handy. But what I'm trying to say here is I've seen a lot of people who go and say, oh, I haven't done maths in IGCSEs or my A-levels, can actually get into an accounting role or actually do an accounting degree or a professional qualification. Yes, of course you can. You don't need to have maths background for this. The second aspect is that you actually need to have a university degree. And I'll explain this in a bit more detail later on, but accounting and finance as a profession is moving away from having a specific university degree. And when we get into the different routes of how you can get into various roles, I'll explain it in a bit more detail, but at the moment, let's just think about people saying, oh, I definitely need to have a degree to become a professional accountant. You don't. Moving on from there, just the other bits is that you need accounting and finance knowledge in school. Again, you don't need to do accounting as a subject or business as a subject as part of your IGCSEs or A-levels to move into an accounting and finance role. And the last two aspects are, yes, it's boring. On the outset, it may seem boring because people who I've spoken to would just be like, oh, you're just dealing with numbers on a daily basis. But then when I explain to them that, yes, the end result is a number and a massive report, which, to be honest, may look quite boring. But people who prepare those numbers and prepare those reports, the kind of communications they have and the kind of information that they're dealing with on a daily basis is really, really interesting. And any issue or any organization aspect of the business, a person in accounting and finance needs to know all those different aspects of the business and various informations and issues that are ongoing with the business to be able to do their job properly. So I can tell you right now, it's not just numbers. And in the end, all accountants are tax experts. Now, tax is a part of accounting and finance generally, but anyone who's a professional accountant is definitely not a tax expert, and I'll touch base on that when we move into different roles and qualifications later on. Now, let's talk about what are the various routes, I think, that exist for people to get into accounting and finance. And I'll talk through these one by one, and I think this is probably the most crucial area where I think I'll be expecting a lot of questions from people on. So, in terms of the traditional route that I understand existed, let's say 40 or 50 years ago, which my dad talks to me about basically, is that he went to college and did his college, then did a university where he did a degree or did a professional qualification and then moved into the firm or the industry, right? Which is a really basic route where you say, I've gone to college, did my college, then a degree, then moved into the firm of industry, and then got done with my job and then having a good time after that. Now, the basics of the traditional route is you basically have and I think here I'm trying to talk about what are the pros and cons. So in the traditional route, what people used to do is they went to college, they said, I want to be an accountant, move into a degree environment, which basically made them focus more on the degree or qualification that they wanted to get into before professional life. And that meant that they were focusing on just the theoretical elements of their professional life before they got into the practical side of things. What that also meant was because they were only focusing on being in university, they had a better social life where they were gathering with all the students on a general basis. They had a lot more friends who they could, also socialize with. Now, the other aspect that I've put in here is that there are also some self-study options available, and then I'll touch base on that later on when we move into the qualification aspects. And then I think the con side of this is basically because you've done your college and you've gone straight into a degree, which you are trying to fund either by yourself or get a student loan, there is a financial implication of this from a personal perspective. The second route that I'm going to talk about is what nowadays is being referred to as a graduate route. So we pick up the traditional route and we say someone who's done a degree at a university would then look for a specific work experience along with a qualification and then move into a permanent role. So what this basically means is you finish your school, you then move into a university to do a specific degree. Along with your degree, you basically look for work experience. So what happens is you find a big organization who basically has a graduate program, and you basically get a specific role with them, who would fund for your degree and would also give you work experience at the same time. So for example, during the summer when you don't have your university, they'll call you back to work, they'll give you some work experience for a couple of months, and then you go back to university. So this is about a 3 to 4 year course where you're working and you're doing your degree or qualification at the same time. Now, also moving on to the other aspect of this is that what are the pros and cons? So the pros and cons here for a graduate route is basically that what you've already done with your degree. So you initially focus on the fact that you want to get done with the theoretical aspects of a degree, and you've already completed that and then moved on to a work experience where you're getting a professional qualification at the same time. And what I mean by professional qualification is getting a specific accountant qualification, which I'll talk about in a bit of detail later on. So the biggest benefit here is you're done with a degree, you've achieved the first step, and then you moved on to your work experience along with the professional qualification. So where your focus is basically split out in that aspect. The other good thing about this is that even though you have got a degree, when you move on to getting a professional qualification along with your work experience, that is usually funded by your organization. So your organizations would hire you and say, we will pay for your professional qualification while you train with us, and we will help you get that qualification. So that is usually funded by the companies that you're going to work with. And then it's a 3 to 4 year program. And as I said, in terms of financial implication, while the professional qualification is funded, from a degree perspective, you would have either funded for the degree yourself, or you would have got a student loan to do a university degree before you got into a professional qualification stage. Now, this is something that has become quite hot in the past, I would say 5 to 10 years. In the past 5 to 10 years, a lot of organizations have basically started looking for people who are school leavers. What I mean by school leavers is you've literally just finished your school at the age of, let's say, 15, 16, and what you are looking to do is you're looking to get funded and get employed at the same time. So what I mean by that is you finish your school, you look for a business who would basically give you a job, fund for your university degree, and then fund for your professional qualification along with work experience, which would then move you on into a permanent role. Now, the benefits and the cons of this is basically quite simple, and then I'll basically move it from the previous slide. So in terms of the biggest benefit, I think here, and I guess if I had an option back in my time when I finished my professional qualification or my school, sorry, I would have definitely done this. So the biggest benefit I think for this is you have finished your school, an organization is funding for your degree and your professional qualification along with giving you some sort of salary for your work experience at the same time. So you don't have to look for funding for your degree or your professional qualification. You already have a job and you don't have to get a student loan. So it's basically quite a win-win situation if you think from a financial aspect. From a theoretical and from a career perspective, again, as soon as you finish school, you've already landed off with a job at an organization. So in terms of your career, you already know that you are sort of secured in that aspect. So you finish school, you've already gotten a job, and while you're studying, you basically also get some practical experience at the same time. So school leavers would normally be going to university for a specific time during the year, but then organizations would also give them work experience at the same time. And point number 3 and point number 4 in this aspect are sort of linked. So because these are 5 to 6 year programs where you've literally just finished school, by the end of year 6, although you would have done your degree and professional qualification, you would also have quite a bit of work experience at the same time. So imagine if you left as a person who did a degree and was in a 3-year program, he would have had a 3-year work experience, he would have a student loan, and he would have only worked for 3 years. But as a school leaver, you would have been at the same stage of your professional career. After 6 years, you would have had 6 years of experience, no student loans, a completely funded program, and you would have a proper job at the end of year 6. So compared to a graduate program person, I think the biggest difference is from a financial and from an experience perspective, you will be in a lot better position. And then obviously there is a bit of a negative aspect to this, and I think that is that you've just finished your school. If you're looking to take it easy for the next 2 or 3 years and just relax while you're doing your degree or professional qualification, I can tell you right now, school leaver programs are slightly tough from the aspect of you've just finished school and you'll be thrown into a professional environment and you'll be doing your degree and your professional qualification, and everyone would expect you to be doing all of that pretty well. So there will be a bit of pressure and stress in this route. Now, these are the 3 different programs that we've sort of touched base on, but the other common scenario and confusion that people fall into is whether people should move into a professional services environment or should people look to work in the industry directly. Now, in a summary, what is the difference? So a professional services environment is basically where you are a professional accountant and you are providing professional accounting services to different clients. What I mean by the industry is you are working in a organization itself. So an organization itself, for example, could be a bank, it could be a telecom business, it could be a manufacturing business, and professional services people provide services to these organizations. So I think the most common confusion people have is, right, do I get directly into the industry? So do I start directly working with an organization? Or do I work with a professional services business who is providing services to those organizations? In terms of the key aspects here that I would like to touch base on is that the professional practice is basically focus on learning skills and gathering a specific expertise which you can use to provide specific services to the client. And when I talk about the professional qualifications, I'll get into a bit more detail on that. But professional services businesses, so for example, the big 4 accounting firms like KPMG, PwC, Deloitte, what they do is they hire people and they train them to become accountants. So they will make you do professional qualifications and they'll teach you specific skills which will enable you to become specific accountants or professional accountants. In the industry, basically, you would be joining an organization. So let's say you are joining a bank. in a bank, you would be asked to work in a specific department. So at a very high level, you would either be working in a financial role, a management role, or a treasury role. And they will develop your skills in that one specific department. And they will train you in a way that you're gathering that expertise when you're going through the training aspects of your career. Now, the other thing that I would say here is when you're applying in the industry, which I mean organizations, you have to be very thoughtful of where is it that you really want to work. So do you want to get into a banking industry? So do you want to work for a bank? Do you want to work for a telecom business? Do you want to work for a manufacturing organization? What people really need to make sure if they want to work in an industry is that they need to work in a place where they think that they have an interest in, because it will really impact in the long term. And I'll get back to that when we talk about professional qualifications and the other aspects, because